How's it going, and welcome to No Fun Alloved's guide series on Waterdeep Dragon Heist, a 5th edition module. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at one hell of a summer and all of the regality therein. Of course, there is going to be a ton of spoilers, so players do not watch this, but DMs that want that added inside, go ahead and stick around because we have a lot to cover. And here it is, hell of a summer, and here we get all of the amazing detail about the Cassalanter family and their dealings with the devil. They are a noble family who has a lot of money, that they are in debt, and of course they have to have a little bit of sacrifice in the mix. So there is a bunch of things going on here, and the great thing about these people as villains is they fit pretty much into any campaign, as they are not your traditional villains of these big hulking bad guys. No, they are simply just people that are rich and powerful, and that's all you need to have an intriguing villain. Now, of course, as we're going to be getting into, there is the noble estate of the Cassalanters, and of course down below there is the temple to Asmodeus. There's a lot of great stuff in there, but we need to ask ourselves, why would our players show up here in the first place? Well, there is a number of possibilities, right? Your players may have heard about some lavish party going on and decided to crash the place. Your players may have had someone kidnapped by the cult and decided to storm here trying to rescue their friend. Maybe your players had the Stone of Galore taken from their grasp and their path leads to here. Your players have a number of reasons why they could be showing up here, but depending on when they show up and depending on what you have going on in the campaign will truly dictate what is going on. Now, of course, if your players just walk up right to the front door in the middle of broad daylight and say, hey, you stole something from us, that's going to land the players in big trouble because they are dealing with rich and powerful people, and all the city guards are going to say, of course we're going to believe the rich and powerful noble people. Why would we trust all these bums, essentially, right? So hopefully your players are a bit more diplomatic in that sense. Hopefully your players are a bit more creative. If your players start to scour around the place and try and sneak around and see what's going on, they can learn a ton of great things. In addition, of course, your players could walk in here and try and be cordial about it. Maybe they pass themselves off as somebody else, or maybe they just try to understand if there's something going on here. Maybe you make your players think that the Cassalanters are being set up as some villains by someone else who's the real villain, but of course it's just the Cassalanters doing it in the first place. There's a lot of ways you can approach this and how your players are going to approach this. But no matter what, if they approach it, they're going to be in trouble no matter what, right? If your players show up and cause a ruckus, then the guards are going to appear. If your players don't cause a ruckus, then wouldn't you know it, Victoro is going to cast a spell on someone, and that is when all things are going to go sour. Once again, amazing roleplay potential here. Make sure that it is roleplay, because if it is going down to combat, your players are probably going to get wiped. They are low-level people, level 4, maybe level 5 when they get here. And the Cassalanters are pretty strong on their own, but more importantly, they just have all these guards at their beck and call. Now, hopefully, your players approach this with a bit of caution and decide to sneak around and see what's going on. Maybe they try to investigate the area, they try interrogating people, they try questioning the right people. You know, no matter whatever it is, they hopefully learn a bit of knowledge here, and they can learn some great details about the cult of Asmodeus, about how the kids are in grave peril, about how there is a planned massacre on a party. Maybe your players arrive on the day of that party and there's nothing they can do about it because it's too late. Ton of awesome things to be had here. Now, when it comes to normal daytime operations, they're not going to be allowed to walk around the place unless it is the party, at which point, if you're running the party and they show up there, then yeah, they'd be able to walk around the Cassalanter villa itself. Of course, there would be hundreds of people here, and thus it would be pretty hard for them to actually try and do anything too crazy. Maybe they try and sneak around and do whatever. But of course, if there's more people, then more than likely they're going to get caught by somebody. But if they show up and it's not the party, then they're not going to have free reign. They're going to be escorted at every which way by guards and are going to be not allowed to explore around this area, which is a big deal. Of course, crafty players are going to get creative and do whatever, but for the general purposes of just walking around, they're not going to be able to see much. But they will get that fun roleplay element. They will meet up with some noble people that are high and mighty, but they're not going to present themselves as they truly are. They are going to just show off, oh yes, we are the Cassalanters, we are rich, we are influential, and you don't want to be messing with us. Pretty much just keeping it on a base level without revealing their true intentions. Now, when it comes to the actual Cassalanter villa itself, it is actually a pretty interesting place because of a very distinct notice that your players may not pick up on if they don't ask or if they don't perceive anything. but there are no silver objects in the whole villa because silver is harmful to devils. So that's a very interesting thing that people may not notice, the fact that there is no silverware here. In fact, if there is the party going on, you should probably point out that, yeah, it's not the typical silverware you'd see, it's something else. Now, of course, throughout the entirety of the Cassalanter Villa, we get information on every single one of these rooms. There's a lot of fun stuff to be had here, whether that be roleplay elements, exploration-based elements, information that they can learn through investigation, some treasure that they can loot. There is a ton of great things here. Of course, the biggest thing is practically right there in the front is there is a door that leads down into the cellar, and the cellar is what leads to the cult headquarters down below. Now, this is the juicy bit here, the temple to Asmodeus. So if your players have had some dealings with some devils and some strange cultists, your players may get some inkling about what's going on here. If they search around hard enough, or if they follow somebody, or if they just get tipped off, they will learn that there is this temple here. In which case, once they finally arrive, they're going to see the true horror that awaits. That there is not just the Cassalanters that are cultists. No, they have a huge organization of not just a whole bunch of randos, but there is other influential people in the city that are tied to Asmodeus. Your players may show up here just on a stealth mission. Maybe they're coming in full force. Maybe they have pledged themselves to Asmodeus as well. Or maybe your players were captured and are about to become sacrifices to Asmodeus. There's a lot of reasons why your players may show up here, but once again, make this place feel atmospheric. Make it feel creepy because there's some bad stuff going on down here and your players may be witnessing it firsthand. Once again, we get a lot of fun details about every single little location here, but one location that sticks out in particular is Caladorn's Crypt in Area 4A. In this location, if your players show up here, they will be questioned by a ghost. Do you vow to use these items to defeat the forces of darkness? And if your players say yes, they are offered not only a +1 plate armor, which is pretty awesome, but they also get a Mace of Disruption. That right there is an incredibly awesome reward, especially if they are low-level players. These are going to be the biggest items that they've ever received, and I think they're well worth it if they've gotten this far. The big draw of the temple is the ceremonial hall itself, where your players may see that there's just a few cultists, or if they show up right as there's a cult gathering, they're going to see that there's 30+ cultists down here, and they're all worshiping a statue of Asmodeus. Pretty terrible stuff. This is where all the bad things are going on. This is where the sacrifices are going to be held. And this is where your players can actually do some real good here. And they can destroy the cult and also destroy that awesome statue. So if your players do show up here and they've been given that Mace of Disruption, they see that there's 30+ cultists and they're standing right in front of that statue and all worshiping it, a really cool event can happen here. Your players may decide to run past all of those people, hit that statue with the Mace of Disruption, and when it does, it will shatter the bowl, crumbling into pieces. Any members of the cult who witness the destruction of the statue take 2d10 points of psychic damage. Now, as a friendly reminder, cultists on average only have 9 hit points, meaning yes, your players could run up, destroy a statue of Asmodeus. In the process, they will have a whole bunch of cultists' brains blow up to smithereens. That is totally awesome. For special events of this chapter, we get Getting the Gold. If your players allow the Stone of Galore to be captured and they don't have time to steal it back, then Victoro is going to dress himself up as somebody else, specifically Daggle Neverember, go down and talk with the dragon and get all the gold and have all of his hirelings and get all the gold, and easy peasy, then they're going to bring it all back to this location. Of course, that is a great time for your players to get the jump in. Your players could just see that there is a whole bunch of people storming in and out of this place and may decide to jump them instead. Maybe your players jump in when there's the dragon, say, hey, dragon, those guys are liars. And then, of course, that could be it's a big old clown fiesta. There's a lot of ways your players could approach that situation. But if they fail to do any of those, then the gold is going to end up in the Cassalanter Villa. But far more importantly is the Day of the Damned. If your players are unsuccessful in getting the gold away from the Cassalanters, then they are going to throw a big old party. They're going to invite hundreds of people here, and the worst thing about it is all of the guests are going to be fed midnight tears. Now, midnight tears is a big deal because it's a poison that's essentially untraceable. When you drink it, nothing happens immediately. But at the stroke of midnight, on the day you consume a midnight tear, you will suffer a whole bunch of poison damage, which will easily kill any commoner that ever drinks this thing. In fact, it actually could potentially kill some PCs if they're unlucky enough. So hopefully nobody's eating and drinking all the food, But if they are, then that's going to be really bad. But if your players show up to this party and they do not disrupt this event, if they do not cause a scene, if they do not stop the Midnight Tears from being consumed, if they don't do any of those, then there is going to be an absolute slaughter. There is going to be 100 dead people here, and all of those bodies will be sacrificed to Asmodeus. And the worst part about this whole event is the Cassalanters are easily going to be able to hide up this evidence because they can just threaten any witnesses that ever saw this thing, which would realistically only be the party because every other person that's here would be dead. And lastly, for the special events here, we get, if the Cassalanters lose that gold, then their children turn into lemurs, and they vow vengeance against the people that dared stop them from getting all that gold, which is going to be your player characters. So either way, there's probably going to be a nasty foil in the Cassalanters one way or another. Some things to note about this chapter is, much like all the other chapters, is your players are going to be way in over their heads if they are lower levels. If they are lower levels, they're going to be going up against a ton of foes and strong foes that they simply will not be able to beat up. It's just not going to happen. So your players are going to have to be diplomatic in this sense. They're going to have to be creative. This is not a hack and slash adventure. Your players have to get creative here. There's a lot of great ways your players can get creative, though. Your players could pose as nobles. Your players could pose as cultists of Asmodeus. Your players could pose as the hired help. Your players could do a number of things to try and sneak in here, or maybe your players trying to expose their crimes by leaving anonymous tips to the guards. Your players could do so many different things, and obviously it's going to come up to their creativity on how they handle this approach. But the approach is very important. Your players need to get this beaten over their head that this is not an event where your players can walk up and try and stab somebody. It's just not going to happen. If they do, they're going to be seen as bad guys. Even if they do succeed in killing the Cassalanters, that's going to suck for them because the guards are going to kill them, right? The guards are just immediately going to give them the death sentence, and there's nothing they can do about it. It's just really unfortunate for player characters if they are trying to be gung-ho, but that's just not going to work here. But some things to consider as DMs here is you should allow for a lot of creativity. You should make sure that no matter what, if your players fail to see something right in front of them, if they fail a roll, that there is another solution here. If your players never pick up on the fact that it's the Cassalanters, then at some point they're going to get into a brush-in with some cultists, and the cultists are going to leave a bloody trail that leads directly here. If your players do know it's the Cassalanters, but they are stumped on how to get in here, then go ahead and throw that party, and that's going to give an open invitation for your players to just show up here. And if your players have absolutely no clue on how to get to the temple down below, then of course at some point someone's going to let slip, someone's going to let out a little whisper, oh hey, I'll meet you downstairs in the main room there, I'll show you what's up. Your players need to be given information if they are missing out on it. But once again, this all does come back into why are they here in the first place? Are they after the Stone of Galore? Are they after the gold? Are your players just trying to do the right thing? Do your players have some personal vendetta against the Cassalanters? A number of reasons why your players could be here, but no matter what, give them strong hooks and give them things to work with, and you're going to see them truly take this into their own direction. Now, every good campaign needs its twists and turns, and I think the temple here is a great way to do that. If your players have met a person that is their friend, if they're a noble, or if they're just a somewhat of a somebody, then placing them here in this cult will be a great thing. Because that noble friend of theirs could turn around and say, oh, hey, you know, I sold my soul to Asmodeus because I needed some gold and it all worked out for me. Maybe you guys should join me. And then your players can have that dynamic conflict of like, oh man, that's our friend, but at the same time, they're an evil worshiper of the devil. Ooh. You know, that leads to just fun dynamic encounters. Heck, last time I ran this, one of the player's characters was a noble, and his father, who was basically the money of the family, he was a member of this church, and he said, oh yeah, you know, I sold my soul and all of our souls over so we can get rich. And then that was a big old thing of, oh man, I thought we were cool nobles, but we're not cool anymore. You know, I thought that was a pretty awesome thing, and I definitely think that can fit into any campaign. No matter what the circumstances are, there is something very important to remember with this whole chapter, is the human factor. It's the fact that the Cassalanters, evil as they may be, they're not evil for evil's sake, they're doing it for a cause. They are trying to retain their power, and now they've found themselves in this horrible predicament where they need to save the lives of their own children. And they're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that they don't lose more kids. Playing up the Cassalanters as they are, rich, high nobles who truly believe that the ends justify the means is going to be the reason why your players are going to remember these people as the truly villainous villains that they are. Now in the summer, it is going to be hot, but I promise you that the diplomacy and the intrigue and espionage are going to be even hotter. And that is why I love this chapter. So go ahead and tell me, do you think your players are going to try to rush in guns blazing, or are they going to be smart and diplomatic about this? Are your players going to be coming here chasing after the Stone of Galore, or are they trying to get that money back? And will the Cassalanters succeed in pulling off the deadliest party in all of Waterdeep, or will your players be able to put a stop to it? Go ahead and tell me all those things because I would love to hear it, but that's going to do it for me. Thank you for watching, thanks for listening, and thank you to my amazing patrons. You guys are absolutely incredible. Thank you so very much. And I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.